Welcome to the Forever Cash Life Real Estate Investing Podcast with your hosts, Jack and Michelle Bosch. Together, let's uncover the secrets to building true wealth through real estate and living a purpose-driven life.
Welcome to the Forever Cash Podcast. This is Michelle Bosch. Super excited to have an amazing sales queen with me today. Her name is Ryann Dowdy. Ryann is the CEO and founder of the Social Sellers Academy. She has spent the last 15 years in corporate America building multi-million-dollar, sales organizations within corporate America, has trained now a lot of people in the marketing space, a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, seven-figure entrepreneurs is really where I would say your sweet spot is now today. And I am so excited. Welcome, Ryann, to the show.
I am very excited to be here. Thanks, Michelle, for the opportunity.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you find yourself all of a sudden, in sales? Was this like you just woke up one day and you're like, yeah, this is what I'm good at. This is what I'm going for?
No, that's not what happened at all. No, so I studied actually PR and advertising in college and had the awesome opportunity to work for a PR firm in Manhattan in my last year of school. And we were pitching products to magazine editors. I worked for a really cool agency. We did like swanky high-end products and we were trying to get placements in magazines. And I literally pitched, and this is old school, right? Like it was like fax and like stuff like that, where we were pitching products for placement in magazines. And I loved it. And I was like, yeah, this is really great. And then when I graduated college, I decided to not live in New York City and I moved to Orlando, Florida with a girlfriend, and PR just wasn't as relevant, but I found a lot of sales jobs. And what I learned is that sales and PR were kind of the same thing, except for when you got somebody to say yes in sales, you got paid a commission for it. And I'm very money motivated, and I was young and broke and a college kid. And I was like, well, if I'm going to be pitching myself, I might as well get paid for it. So I took the sales route totally on accident, totally self-taught, spent a lot of years actually not really that awesome at it. But fortunately, I was young and broke, so I didn't need to make a lot of money. And once I realized that it was not just like, oh yeah, you can make a little bit of money, but you can make a lot of money, I really started studying and learning and getting good at it. And then the journey from, salesperson to entrepreneur, I went from individual contributor to channel sales rep, national sales trainer, director of sales. I wore all the hats in sales, and then decided to become an entrepreneur after I had a kiddo who's now 4 at the time of this recording. And what I learned, Michelle, is that nobody's talking about sales in entrepreneur land. Or if they are, it's being taught, by a lot of what I call bro marketers. Which are, God love them, they're making money, game on, but it's a lot of stuff that just isn't about relationships or isn't focused on, that human to human connection, which, I'm really passionate about. So it's been a couple of years to get me here as the co-founder of Social Sellers Academy, but I love the work that I do. I love getting to talk about my favorite things, which are sales and money and freedom. And that's how we got here.
That's awesome. So basically it's a your philosophy in sales, it's relationship building, which I absolutely love. I actually, when I met you for the first time, for everyone listening, Ryann and I, along with Jack as well, my husband, we are part of a high level 7 and 8 figure mastermind. And I was just, so impressed when, I heard, first of all, about this term called social selling. This was, something that was not in my radar for a while, to be frank, even though I have been an entrepreneur for many years, because our focus has been that relationship. And I was always thinking, well, how in the world are you going to create, such a relationship, on social? Not that, you don't get leads and generate leads through social and nurture a lead and so on and so forth. But how are we gonna, get that connection? How are we gonna really build that relationship? And ever since there, I actually stumbled across the term in 2019, and now I'm like, oh my God, I'm all about social selling. That's all I want to do. Not just in our investing, but also in our education, business. And both businesses, we've been able to really, bring in this concept of social selling and really understand and really learn from people like you, inside of this master class or mastermind as to how to actually develop that human connection. Can you tell me a little bit about, when people hear social selling, what exactly, do you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think of social selling is literally just leveraging social media as a sales tool. So I started selling radio advertising pre-social media, or it was in its infancy. So when I started my sales career, I was selling radio advertising in Orlando, Florida. And in order to prospect or connect with new people, I had to cold call. I could send some emails, but not everybody had email, and it certainly wasn't following them around on their phone like it is now. I could go pull doors in, office complexes and stuff, which I did a lot of. And I used to have to print the directions from MapQuest, so I knew where I was going because I didn't have a smartphone. I'm like,
I remember MapQuest. Believe me, I've looked at properties using MapQuest in the past, or attempted at finding the land, with using MapQuest.
And this isn't even that long ago. I mean, we're talking 2004. It's really not that long ago that this was the case, but, or we went to networking events and stuff like that. So that was the old school model of outside sales. So the way I think of social selling is we're now leveraging the ability to connect with billions of people with a B on social media, right? Leveraging whatever social source makes sense for you: LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Clubhouse, TikTok, whatever it is next week, next month, it'll change, right? But really leveraging those social platforms to build relationships, meet new people, solve problems, and ultimately sell our services and programs.
Yeah. We sell a lot of our land. I would say that 50% of it, because it's higher price, we actually engage the services of, realtors in the areas that we already know really, really well, people that really understand the market. But about other 50%, we use online marketing. We've been students of, digital marketing now for some years, building a buyer's list using, digital marketing and so on and so forth. And the latest rave, really the last, I would say 4 to 5 years, has been using Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, but mainly Facebook. I think that was a real, when it comes to social, as a good viable place to find, leads and build your buyer's list, for investing or for the land business, and sell in Facebook groups, sell in using Facebook Marketplace, and so on and so forth. And it's and it is a little bit different in that the acquisition is a little bit more, I would say, labor intensive, because there's an actual human, unless you want to use a little robot or a bot, which again is not about creating relationships. It does require that you put in the work. And for us, the natural progression was well, I'm not going to be, sending DMs, immediately, to somebody for hours and to go through all the noses to get to all the yeses. So let's hire, team on the disposition side that can do a lot of that legwork for us. And I know that, you train, CEOs and their teams on doing that. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do in Social Sellers Academy?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with CEOs and their sales teams to help them develop their sales processes. So everything from, you were talking about DMs and stuff. How do we start conversations with strangers without being a weirdo, right? How do we build that human to human connection? How do we send messages people will actually respond to? Okay, now they're responding to my messages. Where do I go with this conversation? How do I make sure that I'm not wasting my time with people who aren't qualified or aren't serious? So it's literally, Michelle, we spend our time based on the needs of our clients, anywhere from lead generation to actually how to have the sales conversation, how to close business, how to navigate the direct messages for, sales, like I said, CEOs and their sales teams. So we do everything. Like today we role played in Social Sellers Academy, we role played the consultation. What does that sound like when we finally get, a qualified buyer on the phone? What does that conversation look like? Yesterday we trained on re-engaging old leads. Day before that, we were brainstorming DMs. Like I'm stuck in DMs. How do I get, what do I do here? Where do I take this conversation? How do I get out of this? I'm getting this objection. How do I overcome it? So it's very hands-on and intensive, which I love because, anything worth learning is going to take some time and take some practice. And that's what we do.
Yeah. For somebody that, is, in corporate America or in a profession or as a business owner, that, business owners, I mean, you cannot have a business without mastering sales. But if you are in corporate and you're selling all of the time, whether it's your idea, whether it's the movie, to your son or your daughter or whatever, but can you go through right now, you touched on quite a few different aspects of sales. Can you go like from beginning to end and of course at lightning speed, because we cannot probably go into detail because it would take the entire hour, or I just need to bring you for another one of these, of course. And basically, how does the sale process work? So we have, this incredible universe of potential customers, and then take the story from there.
Yep. Perfect. So we start with lead generation, right? That's always step one in the process. Some people generate leads using Facebook ads, using advertising, marketing. If you're in traditional business, maybe you're using trade magazines, billboards, all the different ways in the world. That's kind of the advertising side of things. But what we teach more is the outreach side of things. Yeah. So how to say, okay, Michelle Bosch, I see her on social media. Maybe we're on Instagram. She's totally the ideal client for my product or program. What I would then do from there is I would probably follow her on Instagram. I would engage on some of her stuff, and then ultimately get into a direct message conversation. And it wouldn't be a pitch, right? We don't DM our pitches or anything like that. It would be something simple like, hey, Michelle, I love what you and Jack have created. You guys are total bosses. That's so much fun. What inspired you to get into land flipping, right? And just start a conversation. So that's like what we spend a lot of time teaching people, just how do I start a conversation? Because it doesn't always come naturally. I didn't know that, Michelle, because apparently my mother tells me I've been starting conversations with strangers my whole life. But for some people, that just doesn't come naturally. So, we start there, right? Getting into the conversation. And then from there, we go into booking conversations. And it could be a sales conversation, or depending on your sales process, maybe it's a connection call, a coffee chat, a qualifying call, a pre-sales call. I've heard it called a bajillion different things depending upon the industry. So we've got to first find the people, start the conversations with the people. Then we've got to invite them into a conversation. Ultimately, that conversation is meant to build rapport and qualify, right? And then
when you say qualify, what are you referring to? To somebody that has never done this and that is going to go sell their first piece of land, using social media, and they have maybe 20 inquiries from people saying, hey, I'm really interested in your land. Can you send me more details? And how do we bring that conversation forward from there to some of those, we're going to respond with open-ended questions to see if this is a person that we can get on the call to talk about the piece of land. And now you have them on the call, and you of course talk about all the benefits and the areas and the amenities and what you can build, what you cannot build. But what is most important, because I always, in my experience, we always want to talk about what we have, and we forget to ask actually what the person needs this for. What is their exit strategy? What are they looking to build on the land? And so from that very overall, how would you qualify?
Sure. So to me, what you just described is two different things. It's like qualifying and doing a little bit of a consultation. So for me, qualifying, if you've got 20 people that are saying, I'm interested in your piece of land, you don't have time to get on the phone with all 20 of them. So what I'm trying to do first in the DMs is figure out which one of these people are actually qualified. So qualifying might mean, can they afford it, right? Can they afford the piece of land that you're trying to sell, right? Yeah. Another qualifier might be, are they the decision maker, right? So if it's like Michelle and Jack, they're business partners. I don't know how decisions are made in your business, right? But my guess is they're made collectively. So if you're just trying to sell the land to Michelle, you're missing Jack. Or if you're just trying to sell the land to Jack, you're missing Michelle. Right. So I want to know that before I ever get on the phone with Michelle to talk about this piece of land, because I want to make sure Jack's on the phone too, because Michelle's not going to make a decision without him. Right. Yeah. So I want to know, again, can they afford it? And that might be asking questions about what do they do for a living or where do they live, right? We want to make sure they're the decision makers. Hey, Michelle, you're interested in this piece of land. Is this for personal or business use? And likely Michelle's going to say, well, my husband and I have a land flipping business, right? So, she's going to tell you from the beginning if you ask the right questions. So those are kind of my biggest ones. I also like to look for historical buying decisions, right? Okay. Have you purchased land in the past? Right? Because we all know that a newbie is going to be way more gun shy and probably a lot more work than somebody who is experienced. That doesn't mean we disqualify them. We just want to know what we're working with, right? Yeah. Just so we know. So now I've got my 20 people whittled down to the 5 that I actually want to get on the phone with, right? Yeah. Because I have found that this person's not real. They can't afford it. They're not legit. They're a hobbyist. They're just playing, right? So now I've got 5 people I'm going to get on the phone with. And from there, we do what you can call a consultation, a discovery call, a needs analysis. Again, everybody's industry uses it differently. And that's where I'm going to figure out, what Michelle and Jack want with this piece of land, right? And I teach a really simple framework. I call it current situation, desired situation. Why is this important to you, right? Mm-hmm. So where are you at right now? Why do you want to buy this piece of land? What are you going to do with it? What does that look like, right? Mm-hmm. Like Michelle said, instead of just being like, let me tell you all the great things that I have, right? That's the pitch. This is before the pitch, right? This is what do you want and why? Yeah. Because people buy based on emotion and they justify with logic. And some of you are going to be like, but I sell to investors. They're all logical. Baloney, right? Like that's just not true. Everybody is emotional. Everybody is emotional. We are emotional beings. So even though logically this is a great buy, why are they buying it, right? What's that cash flow afford them or their family? What goal are they hitting? What are they doing? Are they passionate about giving back? Are they passionate about donating? Are they passionate about travel, right? Maybe their land flipping business is a side hustle that pays for them to travel once a quarter, right? We want to know those things. Because when we do tell them, here's the land, here's how you can build on it, can't build on it, what you can do with it, the amenities, yada, yada. And then we tell them how much the land costs and they say things like, I can't afford it, or I got to think about it, or I'm not sure. Then we have the ammo to overcome that objection, right? I'm walking you all the way through the process at this point, overcome the objection like, hey, I get it. This is, because you said you usually sell higher value pieces of land, right? Absolutely. This is more than that piece of land across town. A, here's why it's more. And B, here's how selling or buying this piece of land is going to help you, on that next Parisian vacation, or why that piece of land is going to help you make that giant donation to that charity that's really important to you, right? And we can then tie the price point and the why and what they want into how they're emotionally motivated. It's going to be so much easier to get a yes.
Absolutely. You hit it on the spot. Of course, you are the sales queen. So we have, in our community, and for a lot of the people listening right now, we have, a lot of them that are already probably at the step where we're not just dabbling with land flipping, and I'm not just, selling a piece of land here and there, but I'm ready to, I have already maybe 30, 40, 50 deals under my belt. And I'm in the second phase of my business where I'm now looking to bring in, help and not have the business rely entirely on you. Because I don't know, is that the biggest thing that you find in the entrepreneurial world, is that basically the business depends entirely on the owner. And if something runs you over, or for some reason you get sick, then no sales are happening because you're not happening because you're out of commission. Would that be fair?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty much for us. We always look at real estate, and even in active investing, entrepreneurial venture like land flipping, which requires you to actively be in it, unless you sell using seller financing. But in order to get to that point, you still need to sell. Jack and I have always been of like, okay, how can our businesses enjoy freedom of money, time, relationships, and purpose? Just like we want as entrepreneurs those freedoms, does our business enjoy those freedoms? And if our team doesn't have the freedom of time, to go on vacation or have redundancy so that the other, a team member can go on vacation, or it doesn't have the freedom of money and everything really depends on Jack and myself and no one else, then that business is, it's not a real business. It's kind of like another job, You just happen to be self-employed. And so we're always, in our community, in our coaching community, we're like, okay, now it's time to bring in either a VA or somebody full-time that is going to be taking care of your disposition, your sales of your land. And a lot of people, I think that just hiring a VA or someone and bringing them on board is going to kind of like solve their sales problems. Right. I know that you probably encounter this a lot. What are some of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make, in your opinion, when they bring in help, especially on the sales side? And then, 30 days pass, 60 days pass, and you're like, okay, they're not producing any sales, but then there's not even KPIs that they know of, that that the team might know of that they need to be hitting, and so on and so forth. Can you explain a little bit of like, what are the typical things that you see people there, when they're ready to make that evolution of bringing team on board, especially to help them in sales?
Yeah, great question. And it actually starts in even something simple where you said bringing on a VA to sell. I'm always very careful of that, because a virtual assistant is a virtual assistant. And we see this, and I'm not picking on anybody because of sales. We see it all the time. You see it in a Facebook group. Like, I'm looking for a VA to, write my sales copy for me. I'm looking for a VA to do my books and my business. Like, no. Let's hire a specialist, right? A VA is a VA, and it was my first hire. My virtual assistant was the most incredible investment I ever made in my business. I am not downplaying VAs at all, or assistants or anything like that. I think they're super valuable, but like, we got to hire the right person for a job, right? It's like bringing a knife to a gunfight, right? Like, we have to make sure that we have the right person. That's first and foremost. So
for me also, that they're all in on what I'm doing and that they're not doing anything else. I want to be like that. My land is their entire universe.
But some people, in the beginning, Michelle, aren't able to hire full time. So like, my first social seller I hired her part-time. She was part-time, hourly. She worked a full-time job in me until I was able to afford her full-time. So I don't think that we have to go all in immediately. It's just making sure that person, like, that's what they're there to do. Because when your social seller's job is to manage your calendar and to manage your inbox and to sell stuff and to, make sure, mail this out and mail that out, because I know there's a lot of different nuances in what the work that you guys do, like, they can't focus on it. So that's the first thing, is buy somebody or hire somebody, even if it's only for 15 hours a week, but that in those 15 hours are solely focused on selling. I think that that's very, very important. Because like I said, a lot of people are like, well, I have a salesperson. And then you find out that salesperson has 6 other jobs. And it's like, well, yeah, that's why they're not selling anything. So the first thing we have to do is hire somebody who's dedicated, or at least if they're wearing multiple hats, because in startups we do, right? But that there is dedicated time for sales. So it's like, all right, you're going to work 30 hours a week, right? Maybe they are part-time. 10 of those are going to be spent over here. 20 are going to be spent in social selling. And then we go into the other things that you mentioned, is setting that person up for success, right? What are the KPIs, right? The key performance indicators. What are the metrics? What should that person be doing every day? How many new people should they be talking to? How many existing conversations, like all of those things that are important in your business and how you sell, we want to make sure that they know that. Again, you wouldn't hire an assistant and not give them all of your systems and processes, right? You would have SOPs for all of the other things they would be doing. But for some reason with sales, we think, I don't know why we don't do that. And this is not exclusive to real estate or entrepreneurs. Like, this happened in the corporate world. Like, my last job, I literally walked in and I was like, none of this like documented in any way, shape, or like, we don't even know what's happening here. Fortunately, that's like my favorite thing to do. So it was a good fit for me, but other people would not have been interested in that or known how to do it or have that skill set, right? So we want to make sure that we are setting our social sellers or salesperson, however they're selling, up for success by having SOPs around your sales process, by having metrics and KPIs, by having a lead tracking system in place, by them really fully understanding the ideal client, right? Who are they? Why do they buy? What's the problem that you're solving, right? Do they really know those things? Do they know what success looks like, right? So it's the SOPs, but then also something you hit on there that I think is important is you're like, well, it's 30 days and it's 60 days and they're not selling anything. The question I ask, and maybe in your business, they should be selling in the same 30 and 60 days, but maybe they shouldn't, right? Like, and it's really are we being impatient? should they know how to do this immediately? How experienced are they? How long did it take you to get your first sale when you first started, right? Like, we want our salespeople to sell on day 3, but it took us 3 months to figure out what the heck we were doing to figure out how to sell it, right? But we have unreasonable expectations. So I think also it's being realistic. Like, how long will this really take to bring somebody into our organization, get them used to our culture, right? Which I know you're really passionate about, Michelle. Train them how to sell in a way that feels good to us. Train them on what we do, and then actively give them enough time to go start enough conversations with enough people to actually sell something. And I'm not saying it should take like years for your social seller to be up and running, but I get people on like week number 3 and they're like, they haven't done shit. And I'm like, well, it's been like 5 minutes. They know where the bathroom is. I mean, they work remotely, so maybe they do. But if we had real jobs and we worked in an office, right? Like, would they know, like, where do I eat lunch? Where do I go to the bathroom? Like, who do I call when my computer won't work? Like, why? I don't know why we have these. So that's another one. And then final thing, because I could talk about this till I'm blue in the face, is making sure that we have a training system in place, or a training plan in place. And obviously, you know, I run a sales training organization, so I think that you should hire us to do that for you. But if you can't or don't want to or whatever, you know, how are they going to learn? Is it, do you have recorded calls that you've run, right? Are there recordings that they can listen to? Can they sit in on you running calls, right? Is that the way that they do it? By shadowing you, and then you're shadowing them? Is it a book, right? Like, I'm obsessed with the book Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blunt. Like, every salesperson in the world and entrepreneur should go read that book, right? Is that how you
I like it. Fanatical Prospecting. I'm reading it too, and having my team on both sides, on both businesses. Let's go and read it.
It's one that, like, I don't care what you do. If you're selling in some capacity, go read that book. But you know what I'm saying? Maybe it's they read the book and that's their training. And it's like, okay, how are you going to take what you learned in that book and bring it to this organization, right? But making sure that there's ongoing training and support for that person as they learn what's going on. What oftentimes we see is sales training as an event, right? Maybe it's a 2-day boot camp. Maybe it's a 30-day thing with you. And then, like, we're like, swim fishy, right? And we just want them to go. And it's ongoing, right? Because this is a corporate reference, but this will probably ring true. I remember sitting in a sales training. I was in Washington, D.C., and I'm sitting in a classroom, and it's like day 3 on the job. I'm working for a startup out of DC, loving life. And they're teaching us how to input orders. I'm like, it is day 3 in the job. Like, do you think by the time I actually close business that I'm going to remember what you taught me? Like, I'm drinking from a fire hose right now. Like, no, right? So I'm big. I'm like, meet them where they are. What do they need to know first, right? They probably need to know lead gen and conversation starting first, right? And then teach them how to have conversations. And so, you know, we want everybody to learn everything all at once. And then, you know, it's been 6 weeks since you taught them how to input that order. They don't remember. Because they've learned so much. So I think having a training plan that progresses as their career progresses is super important, and something we have a tendency to overlook.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as far as, you know, managing, you know, you talk about KPIs, but how does it, if I am bringing someone on board, how does it actually look? Because, like, I know in both of my teams, but if anyone is listening to this, you know, how does it look to bring, you know, somebody on board part-time, like you said, you know, if you can't afford somebody full-time, and how does the managing look? Because you can't just say, or at least I know from experience that I can't just say, well, here's, you know, a listing that, you know, my other person here has already prepared and has, you know, blasted across all of these different channels. And now they're producing leads and people, you know, asking about properties and so on and so forth. But how are you, and then I can't just give that to that person and say, you know, go and pick up the phone and go and, you know, respond on DM to all these people on these 3 platforms. Here's the logins. And I come back, you know, at the end of the week and expect a sale. Like, what should really be happening, like, every day when you first bring someone on board?
In the beginning, I mean, every day, it should be a lot of hand-holding. In the very beginning, they should be watching you do that, right? Yeah. Like, if it's your very first sales hire, it should be like, okay, this is what we're going to do today. Come along, right? And obviously, in a virtual world, that's via Zoom, right? This is what we're doing. This is how I'm doing it. What questions do you have, right? It starts with shadowing, right? Yeah. But ultimately, when this person has enough acumen to be able to go do the things, they understand what you just said. We're really big on doing like AM and PM check-ins with our team, right? Having a meeting every morning, short and sweet. And I know that you're fighting this. I fought it so hard because I've worked for so many companies who did terrible morning meetings that were a giant waste of time.
Yeah, we actually do morning huddle. Every morning we do a morning huddle.
Yep. Every morning.
It's so important. But I wasn't doing the afternoon check-in.
Yeah. Because the morning is, what are you going to do today?
Yeah.
And our question, I actually stole this from Jess and Margie, who are also in the mastermind that we're in. What results are you causing today? That's what they tell me every morning. Yeah. And then in the afternoon, it's how do we do? What's going on? Where are we at? So I can coach in real time, right? You told me this morning that your goal was to add 20 new leads to your database and get out 50 DMs. You only got 35. Why? And then they're able to say, well, because I actually wound up, talking to this one person for 20 minutes who's really, really qualified. And I'm super excited. They're coming to our upcoming workshop, blah, 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 blah. Because I'm like, okay, cool, right? It wasn't because they were twiddling their thumbs. It wasn't because they didn't understand, but it was because they got into a really good conversation, which to me is valuable. Or
absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of lost track of time. Well, then I know that I'm coaching in real time on time management and how we make sure we get our numbers. So we do AM and PMs. I don't do PMs on Friday, and that's selfish because I don't want to be on the phone with them at 4:00 on Friday afternoon, nor do they want to see me. In replacement of that, we use Slack as our company communication, and so they have a Slack channel, and they'll come in on Friday afternoons and kind of recap their whole weeks. And then they also have a metrics tracker, Michelle, that I get every week as well. So I can go in and look at like day-to-day activity. So we do AMs, we do PMs, and then we do a one-on-one every week as well. So I call that kind of their coaching calls, right? Yeah. And some of you might be being like, but Ryann, I'm not a sales coach, but you were the salesperson in your business, right? Mm-hmm. So why, what's going on? Are they not meeting the metrics? Are they not meeting the KPIs? Or are they meeting them and then they're not getting the results, right? How do we course correct? And don't worry about getting this right or wrong. It's a lot of trial and error, right? I mean, business is one giant experiment anyway, right? So it's just really, walking them through that and coaching them and giving them the support that they need to be effective. So that's how we really focus on, the accountability-led sales organization. Right now, because my business, Social Sellers Academy is still relatively new, I'm wearing that hat. My goal is by the end of the year, I'm able to elevate a leader in my organization and I don't have to run those anymore because they're not my favorite thing to do. Right. Yeah. And it's just,
but they're so necessary. And eventually, your business will grow to a level where you have somebody that is, your manager for your sales reps. And that person then is in charge of doing that and so on and so forth. But, it's an evolution for sure.
Right. You graduate from salesperson in your business. Right. And now I'm wearing the sales manager hat in my business. And then eventually, somebody else will wear that hat and I will graduate to the next role. And that's, I think, the evolution of business is general, right? We start as chief cook and bottle washer and we just keep promoting ourselves, promoting other people and promoting ourselves out of it is the goal.
That is the goal. At the end of the day, where I think that's why we start businesses for those freedoms. And now I wanted to ask you because I am a firm believer that, that even if I'm an entrepreneur and even if I'm hiring someone and maybe they do not have that entrepreneurial drive and spirit, but in some way, shape or form, they must be having some entrepreneurial tendencies in order to want to be in sales. Because if in sales, I almost feel like if you're, that's one single position in an organization or in a team where you can really decide how much you want to make, and that you can really treat your desk like that. This is my CEO desk in my sales position, in my sales job. And so how do you drive? And because of that, I always think as a salesperson, or any sales team members that I bring on board, I think of them as entrepreneurs from that perspective. And I don't think that a lot of business owners really understand that and fail to make a connection between what, the service and transformation that they're selling and goals that are actively black and white goals to actually something that really moves that salesperson, a connection between their own personal goals of freedom, of freedom of money, of financial goals that they might have for their family and so on and so forth. How do you drive that within your team, or how do you help other entrepreneurs drive that, within their sales organizations to make sure that super important ingredient, because that's what's going to make, someone, at the last hour or want to be at 4 p.m. on Friday, still making, that call, because they're working towards something that, number one, yes, it's paying the bills, but, and helps me reach these financial goals, but also helps me do this. And I think I know what the answer is going to be, but I want to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're talking about vision casting, right? We're talking about mission and vision. And there's your mission and vision as a company, and then there's their mission and vision as an individual. And it's our jobs as leaders. And it's actually not just our sales teams, right? I mean, sales teams, because they're money motivated and they have the opportunity to control their income. But across the board in our organizations, we should be vision casting. Like, nobody wants to come to work and feel like a cog in a wheel. So, we want to make sure that we are sharing that mission and vision often. But what I like to do is to find out, like, what do they want? What is your goal? What do you want? Like, when I was in the corporate world, I made my sales teams create their own business plans every year. They had to bring it to me. Here's my business plan. Here are my goals. Here are my numbers. Here's what I'm going to do. Because then it wasn't me. I wasn't the one being here like, Michelle, you didn't do your job because I da-da-da-da-da-da. It was like, no, here's the plan that you made. We're no longer on how do we course correct to get your plan into play? So treat them like entrepreneurs, right? What are your business plan? What are your goals? Where are you going? And then also, but pulling them into the bigger picture, right? Because as human beings, our basic human needs to be seen, heard, understood, to be part of something, let them know what they're part of. Talk to them. And I think that the bigger the company gets, unfortunately, I think this gets watered down. But one of my big goals is to not allow that to happen in my company, because I have worked for companies where I was like, the person who is getting paid on this deal is so far removed from me that they don't care about me. And that's not a good feeling. And I know that in big companies with hundreds of employees, we can't know and love everybody, but somebody needs to be knowing and loving them. Right? Somebody in your organization needs to know and love all of the people in your organization, even when it's not you anymore. And I think that is so important. But then also treating them like entrepreneurs. Like, the reason I love sales is because you don't have to work 8 to 5, or maybe you do, but you can leave at 3 o'clock and go pick your kid up from school and come back. Right? You can take a half an hour to go to the, preschool graduation ceremony and then come back. Because you're a remote employee, because, as long as you're good at what you're doing and you're hitting your goals, like, you do you, right? Take your kid to the doctor. I'm not going to make you, request PTO to make that happen or anything like that. So for me, I do treat them like they have a lot of freedom, but on the flip side of that, there's also a lot of expectation of what you get for that freedom, which is, ultimately driving revenue for the company.
Yeah. What do you do as a sales engine, of your company, or as an entrepreneur, and CEO, and that you teach others and teach your sales reps to cultivate? I'm pivoting here a little bit, to cultivate grace in our everyday, because it can be intense. It can be a lot of no's. It can be a lot of, amazing conversations, and then that end up in disappointment and so on and so forth. But so every day to feel like, okay, I feel strong, powerful, like I'm on warrior mode today, from a sales standpoint. Like, how do you cultivate, that fire and grace to go out there and really make and be of service to those people that you're trying to sell something to?
Yeah, I love that question, Michelle. So there's 2 ways that I do that. The way that I teach my sales team grace is I tell them what I'm going through. And and again, we're still a super small company. We're still in startup phase. I'm very candid, right? Like, if I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not excited about where we're at right now either. Here's what I'm doing about that, right? Here's the action I'm taking. Here are the things I'm doing, right? And I'll share with them that, it's the books that I'm reading, or the podcasts that I'm listening to, or the rooms that I'm getting into, or those types of things, right? Because I think it's just important to be human, and be like, yeah, no, I'm not paying you to, grind over here and get your butt kicked every single day. And, I'm rolling around in piles of cash, right? Like, I'm busting my butt over here too. And I think sometimes when they feel like you're in it with them, or someone, right? If it's not you, it's a leader. If they feel like someone is in it with them, that's helpful. And then the second thing that we do as part of our AM meetings and part of those check-ins is mindset, right? That's why we start with the question of what results are you creating today? You are in charge of your results. You are the CEO of your desk. Like, we're going to have an amazing day. At the beginning of the month, we set our monthly goals and we talk about how many lives we're going to change and how exciting it's going to be. We celebrate wins from our clients, right? So it's like, yeah, so-and-so just closed ABC, XYZ. So it kind of lights that spark for them of the bigger picture, right? Yeah. It's not just the KPIs, the metrics, the numbers, the tracking, the DMs, the phone calls. It's like, no, it's the human life, right? That you get to impact. It's that person who, that business owner who had their first 7-figure year because, we trained their sales team, or that salesperson who we just actually, a gal the other day said in 2020, she closed 2 sales. She worked for this company for, I think, 4 or 5 months, closed 2 sales. So far this year, she's closed 16. Right. And so for her, she's a work from home mom with a little living in Canada. Like, that's life-changing for her, right? Absolutely life-changing. So I think sharing those types of wins with your team keeps them motivated, keeps them fired up. And that's actually why I like the PM check-in as well, is because I don't ever want them to sign off for the day beating themselves up.
Yeah.
Because then they show up the next day beating themselves up, and I can't afford to have that happen. Right.
Yeah.
So
I like what you say. I can't afford to have that happen. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because if they come in the next day being like, I suck, I'm never going to sell anything. It's just, they're going to create their own self-fulfilling prophecy. So I try to cut it off at the pass at the end of a crappy day. And I give them space to tell me they had a crappy day.
Yeah.
Do not show up in a PM meeting and like blow smoke. Like, tell me like, yeah, no, I didn't get nearly as much done. And then tell me what you're going to do to fix it.
Yeah.
And I find, it's like, don't bring me the problem, bring me the solution. That's very much how we run our organization.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Love it. Oh my gosh. I think I could talk, to you about this forever. Ryann, if somebody wanted to, find out a little bit more about you, Social Sellers Academy in general, where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow us on Instagram. We're at Social Sellers Academy. Our website is dailysalesondemandforceos.com.
Woo, daily sales on demand. I like that.
Daily Sales on Demand for CEOs.com. We do have a podcast. It's Daily Sales on Demand for CEOs. But yeah, that is the best place to connect with myself or a member of our team.
Yeah, that's the goal, I think, of all of us, even in the land flipping world. Like, we want to land sell every single day of the week for sure. Right. So thank you so much. It was an honor and a pleasure having you. And I think we may need another conversation of these, Ryann. So maybe an email, you'll receive an email there coming your way on your inbox. So thank you so much. It was amazing. Thank you much.
Awesome. Pleasure to be here.